thought about how the really intense global competition today isn't always, tanks and jets, but maybe something murkier?
Definitely. It's often happening in this shadowy realm,
Mhm.
sort of existing right between declared war and actual peace.
Yeah, that's what we're diving into today, this idea of the gray zone. It's where nations and other groups too are constantly jostling for advantage, but always trying to keep it just below the level of, well, outright conflict.
It's sometimes called that limbo land between peace and war. And it's become, frankly, central to how we need to think about national security now.
So, in this deep dive, our mission is really to make you an expert on these gray zone strategies. We want to pull back the curtain on the tools being used, things like cyber warfare, information operations. They're subtle, maybe, but incredibly powerful.
And they're fundamentally reshaping global dynamics.
Right.
We see this particularly playing out in the Indo-Pacific region, which is just so strategically vital.
Our goal here is to unpack what this gray zone really is. What are the specific cyber and info tactics? What challenges does this create? And, maybe most importantly, what are the recommendations for actually navigating this new era?
And we're drawing on some really solid work here. We've looked at reports from places like the Global Disinformation Lab at UT Austin, the Army Cyber Institute at West Point, the Aspen Institute RAND Corporation, plus analysis from cybersecurity experts and international relations scholars.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. This term gray zone, it actually has a history, doesn't it? It wasn't always used the way we use it now.
That's right. If you go back to 1954, Hans Pfannenleiter, who was the Air Force Secretary then, talked about gray areas. But he meant something pretty different.
He was talking geography, wasn't he?
Exactly. A specific geographical band. He saw it stretching from Turkey through the Middle East, South Asia, Southeast Asia, all the way up to Taiwan, Korea, Japan. Basically a frontier between what he saw as the free world and communism.
Right, but that's not the functional gray zone we're discussing today.
No, not really. The modern definition, like the one U.S. Special Operations Command uses, is more about the type of interaction. It's about competitive interactions that fall between the traditional war and peace duality.
So the key thing is, and this seems crucial, the actions stay below the threshold that would trigger a traditional military response, like below NATO's Article 5 kind of response.
Precisely. It's all about making strategic gains, exerting influence, achieving objectives, but without provoking that large-scale military escalation. You want to stay in that murky space.
Okay, so how does this relate to hybrid warfare? You hear that term thrown around a lot too. Are they the same thing?
That's a really common point of confusion, but they are distinct, though linked. Think of it like this.
Yeah.
The gray zone is the environment. It's that whole murky ocean of competition below open war.
Okay.
Hybrid warfare is a specific strategy you might use within that gray zone. It's like a particular kind of submarine, maybe, that uses multiple tools, information, cyber, economic pressure, proxies, all integrated together.
Got it. So hybrid warfare is how you operate in the gray zone, using a mix of unconventional tools.
Exactly. And those tools, those actions, are carefully calibrated to avoid crossing that line into what looks like formal state-on-state aggression. You want to achieve your goals without, firing a shot in the traditional sense.
But this immediately brings up a big problem, doesn't it? For countries like ours, liberal democracies, we have rules, accountability, public opinion to worry about.
It's a massive challenge. Liberal democracies thrive on, well, social pluralism, rule of law, government accountability. The public generally demands transparency, especially when it comes to military or quasi-military actions.
Which means ambiguity, which is the lifeblood of the gray zone, is really hard for us to use effectively.
It inherently limits how much democratic governments can play in that ambiguous space. Compare that to non-democratic actors, they often face far fewer constraints. They can operate with less transparency, integrate different kinds of operations more easily.
So it creates this kind of strategic imbalance right from the start.
It really does. An uneven playing field where ambiguity itself is weaponized.
Okay, so we've sort of mapped out the shadowy gray zone. Now let's get into the specific tools, the invisible weapons being used. You mentioned cyber and information operations. How do they work together? Is it just isolated hacks or posts?
No, not at all. And that's the crucial point. The real sophistication isn't in any single action, but in how adversaries are learning to combine these vectors. They orchestrate them, like a symphony of subtle pressure.
Okay, so let's break down the instruments. Cyber operations first. How has that evolved beyond just, basic hacking?
It's moved way beyond that. We're talking about sophisticated, persistent campaigns. State actors aren't just breaking in, they're establishing a long-term presence in networks. They're systematically gathering intelligence, mapping systems, and carefully positioning themselves for, well, future strategic moments. It's a very patient game.
So patience is key. They're not always after immediate disruption. What's the goal of just mapping vulnerabilities for years?
A really critical part is this infrastructure mapping. They systematically probe vital systems, power grids, telecom networks, financial systems. The immediate goal isn't necessarily damage. It's understanding.
Understanding weaknesses.
Exactly. Understanding vulnerabilities so that if a future conflict arises, or if they want to exert extreme pressure, they know exactly where and how to strike for maximum effect. Look at the 2015 attack on Ukraine's power grid that required detailed prior knowledge. It essentially holds critical infrastructure hostage without firing a shot.
Chilling. And to keep all this below that war threshold, they must be good at hiding who's behind it, this attribution obscuring.
Oh, absolutely critical. They use deliberate strategies, crafting false flags, routing attacks through networks compromised all over the world, timing actions to coincide with other known threat groups, anything to create doubt.
So it's about plausible deniability.
It's about creating enough doubt. The 2007 Estonia cyber attacks are a classic case, very hard to definitively pin down responsibility in a way that enables a swift, unified response. There's this queue model of attribution with different layers, tactical, operational, strategic. But adversaries know they don't need perfect deniability.
They just need enough fog to slow things down.
Precisely. Enough plausible doubt to paralyze or significantly delay any meaningful response. That buys them invaluable time and keeps the situation murky.
Okay, let's pivot to the other major vector. Information operations or influence operations. What's the core aim there? Is it just propaganda?
It's often more subtle than old-school propaganda.
Yeah.
The main goal is to alter the information environment itself. To shape public debate, yes, but also, critically, to degrade a society's ability to even reach consensus on important issues.
How did it do that?
By confusing facts, eroding trust in media, in government, in institutions, and by amplifying existing social divisions, making it harder for people to agree on what's even true.
And I imagine AI is making this exponentially more potent.
Absolutely. Generative AI is a game changer here. It allows for rapid creation and adaptation of narratives, what some call algorithmic narrative warfare. AI can probe for psychological vulnerabilities and tailor messages at a scale we've never seen before.
Wow. And how does traditional state media fit in, like RT or Chinese state outlets?
They play a crucial role. They often complement the social media operations by providing what looks like legitimate sourcing for disinformation. It helps to launder the narratives, giving them a veneer of credibility they wouldn't otherwise have.
So it's not just blasting messages out, but also targeted efforts. I've read about targeting influential people.
Yes, that's a key tactic. Systematically targeting influential figures, academics, business leaders, journalists, former officials, offering them things like exclusive access, lucrative contracts, prestigious positions.
All while subtly nudging their views.
Exactly. Alongside subtle pressure to align with the state's preferences. It's not always overt. By shaping elite opinion, they aim to influence the broader public discourse indirectly. We see examples like reports of Chinese-funded journalism programs, think tanks hiring former European politicians, or even publishers allegedly pulling politically sensitive content. It's influence cultivation.
The Taiwan example mentioned in the sources really drives home how dangerous this could be.
It really does. Think about using deepfakes combined with real hacked information. You could try to create splits between the government and military, or undermine trust with allies by mixing truths and distortions. Chen Minky in Taiwan highlighted this, releasing hacked info, maybe slightly altered, to sow maximum chaos and doubt internally.
Okay, so cyber and info ops are huge. Are there other vectors integrated into these gray zone campaigns?
Definitely. Economic warfare is another big one, and it's more than just sanctions now. We see sophisticated pressure campaigns using market manipulation, maybe lodging complex legal challenges against companies, and strategic control of infrastructure. China's Belt and Road Initiative is often discussed in this context. It's not just trade routes.
Right, the Sri Lanka port example comes to mind.
Exactly. The Hambantota port case, where the debt terms eventually led to Chinese control of the asset, shows how infrastructure finance can become a tool for strategic leverage and influence.
And then there's institutional subversion. That sounds quite insidious.
It is subtle. It involves building these complex, often hidden networks of financial and professional relationships. The goal is to gradually reshape how institutions behave from the inside
How would that work?
by identifying key decision makers within, say, universities, companies, or government agencies, and then cultivating them over time, maybe through academic exchanges, research funding, joint ventures. Think of programs like China's reported Thousand Talents Plan. It's not about one big bribe.
It's about long-term cultivation.
Yes, cultivating deep, almost invisible webs of influence within an adversary's system, gradually tilting decisions through seemingly normal interactions. It's like trying to reroute a river one drop at a time. Very patient, very strategic.
And lastly, proxy operations. We tend to think of armed groups, but it's broader now.
Much broader. Modern adversaries use sophisticated networks, commercial fronts, academic centers, technical groups, cultural organizations, all acting as proxies. They advance strategic goals while keeping the state's hand hidden.
So maintaining that plausible deniability again.
Always. Iran, for instance, is known for integrating militant groups with various front companies. North Korea uses cybercrime groups like cryptocurrency thieves to generate revenue and gather intelligence. The sophistication is in knitting all these different proxies and vectors together.
Wow. Okay, this paints a picture of incredibly complex, integrated, and frankly, quite sneaky tactics operating below that threshold of war. It really begs the question, what makes societies like ours particularly vulnerable to this?
Well, one huge issue is what's called compounded regulatory lag.
Meaning our laws just can't keep up with the tech.
Exactly. Technology, especially digital tech, moves so fast that our legal and regulatory systems are constantly playing catch-up. This creates gaps, legal gray areas.
That adversaries can exploit.
Precisely. They operate in these gaps. And it's not just about slow laws. It's often about fragmented authority. Think about cybersecurity incident reporting in the U.S. It's a patchwork of federal and state laws, different rules, different deadlines. It's confusing.
I remember reading about the EU AI Act, too. Took ages, and technology had already moved on by the time it started getting implemented.
Right. That kind of lag diminishes how effective policy can be. And there's another angle. The high cost of compliance with complex regulations can actually stifle innovation. Or worse, create monopolies where only big players can afford to navigate the rules.
Which leads to another challenge you mentioned, contested cyber norms. No clear global rules of the road.
Especially in a place like the Indo-Pacific. It's incredibly diverse. Unlike the EU, which has GDPR setting a standard for data privacy, the Indo-Pacific has a really fragmented landscape for norms around data security, cybercrime.
And you mentioned hack-for-hire groups adding to the mess.
Yeah, particularly reports about groups emerging in places like India. It just further complicates building any kind of coherent international agreement on what's acceptable or unacceptable behavior online.
Then you have the kingmakers, who holds the real power in this digital gray zone.
Well, our sources point to two main groups. First, the multi-aligned states, primarily in the Indo-Pacific. Think South and Southeast Asia.
Why them specifically?
Because they're major economic growth engines. Their decisions about digital infrastructure, like do they partner with U.S. tech companies or Chinese ones to build out 5G or cloud services? Those choices will fundamentally shape the rules and the dominant technologies in that massive region. They have huge leverage.
Okay, that makes sense. And the second group of kingmakers?
The big multinational tech companies, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and others. In many ways, they are the de facto sovereigns of cyberspace.
How so?
They own and operate the critical infrastructure. The servers, the cloud platforms, the undersea cables, even state actors often rely on their infrastructure. We saw in the Russia-Ukraine conflict how companies provided essential services. Governments often need these private companies to effectively intervene or defend in cyberspace.
I remember reading a quote from a Danish ambassador basically saying, these tech platforms have more daily impact than many countries.
It's a stark point, but it highlights where a lot of the operational power actually resides in the digital world.
With all this complexity, different actors, technologies, motives, getting everyone on the same page must be incredibly hard. Shared situational awareness.
It's critical, but yes, incredibly difficult. Without a common, accurate, real-time understanding of what's happening, crises can escalate fast. Miscalculations happen. Information gets stuck in silos, or classification rules prevent sharing it quickly enough. Initiatives like the Quad's Maritime Domain Awareness aim for this, but integrating diverse data is a huge challenge.
Which brings us back to deterrence. If it's hard to know who did what, and the actions are below the war threshold anyway, How do you even deter cyber attacks in this gray zone?
It's profoundly difficult. Traditional deterrence often relies on clear threats of retaliation against a known state actor. But in cyberspace, the lines are blurred, attribution is tough, non-state actors are involved.
So the old models don't really fit.
They struggle immensely. How do you credibly threaten punishment when you can't always be sure who to punish, or even if the action warrants a major response? It really complicates the deterrence calculus.
Okay, so if traditional deterrence is shaky and our regulations are lagging, what's the path forward? How do we build resilience? It sounds like we need, as you said, some really holistic thinking and a sense of urgency.
Absolutely. You can't be piecemeal. It needs comprehensive, urgent, and continuous effort, spanning from peacetime right through to potential crisis or conflict. One key recommendation from the sources, particularly for the U.S., is developing a distinct cyber economic trade and development strategy focused on regions like the Indo-Pacific.
Why economic?
Because, as we said, cyberspace is largely private infrastructure. Competing for market share, ensuring aligned tech companies build the infrastructure, that becomes a core part of strategic competition itself. It's not just about defense, it's about shaping the environment.
That makes sense. Reframing the economic competition. And streamlining regulation seems like low-hanging fruit, though maybe hard to implement.
Hard, but necessary. Centralizing regulatory power, maybe through an agency like CISA in the U.S., could drastically improve information sharing and coordination, not just for compliance, but for actual operational speed and effectiveness.
What about that idea of an open access intelligence clearinghouse for the Indo-Pacific?
That's about breaking down those silos we mentioned, creating a platform that integrates government intelligence with insights from the private sector, maybe modeled on things like the Quad's Maritime Awareness Initiative, but for cyber and conventional threats. The goal is shared understanding.
Reducing miscalculation through better visibility.
Exactly. And another key piece is actively reinforcing the commons. Things like expanding regional disaster relief efforts, offering cybersecurity assistance like a joint Indo-Pac cert for countries that lack resources, and pushing information transparency initiatives to expose disinformation campaigns when they happen. Build collective resilience through shared public goods.
And the role of the private sector, the tech companies, seems unavoidable.
Indispensable, really. Look at Starlink or Microsoft in Ukraine. They provided capabilities governments couldn't deploy quickly enough. The key is moving towards planned, sustainable, mutually beneficial partnerships, treating them as strategic allies, not just contractors.
So pulling all these threads together, the economic strategy, regulation, intel sharing, public goods, private partnerships, what's the overall strategic approach to push back in the gray zone?
It really demands a campaign plan approach.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking long-term, using the whole of government, maybe even whole of alliance resources, having a portfolio of responses ready, legal, diplomatic, economic intelligence, maybe limited military actions, not just reacting incident by incident.
So it's about orchestration on our side, too, making ambiguity more costly for the aggressor.
That's the core idea. Orchestrate a persistent, multi-domain campaign that imposes cumulative costs and makes it harder and less rewarding for adversaries to operate in that murky space.
Are there specific technologies that could help beyond just better defenses?
Well, there's a big push for secure by design. The internet, frankly, was built prioritizing connection and scale, not security. It's often described as vulnerable by design.
So we need to flip that.
Especially as we build out new tech, like the Internet of Things, 5G, AI systems. Security needs to be baked in from the start, not bolted on later.
And you mentioned AI earlier as a threat multiplier, but can it be part of the solution too?
Potentially, yes. There's research into concepts like cognitive hive AI or CHAI. The idea is using ensembles of specialized AI modules working together.
How would that help?
They could potentially detect complex, coordinated campaigns happening across different domains, cyber, information, economic, disparate, that a human analyst or even a single AI might miss. It aims for adaptability to keep pace with evolving threats and explainability so we understand why it flagged something. Basically, using AI to help fight AI-driven threats.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've covered a lot of ground on this gray zone competition. What's the main takeaway for someone listening?
I think the key thing is that this gray zone competition, especially using cyber and information tools, isn't going away. It's a persistent, constantly evolving challenge, and it's deeply interconnected. These aren't separate issues. The goal can't just be reacting. It has to be about anticipating, deterring where possible, and proactively outmaneuvering adversaries.
Yeah, it feels like understanding these strategies, even at a high level, is crucial just to make sense of the global shifts happening around us every day. It's not always obvious, but it's happening. And the sources we looked at really drive home one final point. Just sitting back and doing nothing. That's simply not an option. Navigating this requires constant adaptation, strong international cooperation, and frankly, continuous learning from everyone involved to try and safeguard our shared digital future. If you enjoyed this fact check discussion, be sure to like and subscribe to Hack Gear for more.